Before My Heart Gives Out by Kira 18 on AO3. Chapter 23 Forming Connections. Warmth. That's the first thing his body registers as the first few threads of consciousness wrap around his mind, tugging and pulling. He senses it, seeping down to his very core as he wakes up from what feels like the most restful sleep he's had in a while. It takes a few moments for Izuku's senses to stretch out and take in his surroundings, and even longer for him to remember exactly where he was at the moment. The warmth underneath him moves, and it takes all of his well-honed instincts for him not to loosen his composure. He does let out what can only be interpreted as a squeal when he realizes where he had fallen asleep last night. Shinsou, still blissfully asleep, and unaware of the human being he's currently clutching in his grasp like a glorified teddy bear, only hums and pulls him closer into Izuku's head, ends up on his chest, face burrowed into the teen's shirt. To his mortification, the noise he unwillingly lets out actually wakes up the subject of his panic this time. He listens with an enthralled kind of fascination to Shinsou's lungs as they loosen their slow and even pace, breaking the rhythm that's been reaching his ears. He can even pinpoint the exact moment Shinsou seems to realize the awkward position they are currently in. The echo of the teen's heart almost stutters as it changes and speeds up. Good, good morning, comes the uncharacteristic greeting. The stuttering only serves to emphasize Shinsou's nervousness. Morning, Izuku mumbles tentatively. When the teen doesn't make any immediate move to let go of him, he ventures even further. Are you going to let go of me? He doesn't mind, not really. The warmth and sheer safety he feels at the moment would be a testimony to that. However, he can't help but feel a little overwhelmed. It's been a long time since he'd had this much contact with, really, anyone at all. Oh, as if just noticing his arm was still wrapped around Izuku's back, Shinsou lets go immediately. Sorry. And it takes all of his resolve not to pull the teen back into an impromptu hug, then and there. The sudden loss of warmth makes his body shiver involuntarily, but he ignores it. He straightens up into his back as rests against the table behind them. They must have fallen asleep on the floor last night. It, it's okay. It seems the nerves were getting to him too. What time is it? He idly wonders where he left his phone. The room was a total mess, considering the way Shinsou took the news last night. It's 9 a.m. I can't believe we slept that much. Shinsou huffs, moving to sit next to Izuku. Well, Mr. Insomniac, with your sleep schedule, it was bound to happen. Speak for yourself. Your destructive sleep habits were bound to rub off on me eventually. Shadow. Shinsou sing-song, his features stretching into what Izuku can only assume is a smirk. Izuku can't help the grin that grows and mirrors a teen expression, almost subconsciously, glad to see that no matter what happens, their relationship wasn't going to change. It was probably selfish of him to want this. Selfish and cruel. Familiar chains of doubt seemed to grow like vines, threatening to suffocate him from the inside out. Guilt and dread, growing and expanding in the pit of his stomach. However, before his mind can fall into the all-too-familiar spiral of overwhelming dark thoughts, he feels a hand clutch his own. You okay there, Grain? Just as fast as he went in, he feels himself break free. The reminder of just what he had gained last night, making the storm brewing in his mind settle. Yeah, I was just thinking I should probably get going. He stands up after he says this. Aizawa and Tsukauchi want me to come to the station first thing in the morning. They gather his stuff. Shinsou insists that he'd clean his room after Izuku left, not accepting the help offered by the green-haired boy. However, just as he was about to walk back out the window and onto the fire escape, Shinsou speaks up. Wait, Izuku. Tilting his head to the side in confusion, he waits for the boy to gather his thoughts. I want you to promise me something. He breathes in deeply, as if to brace himself for something. The teen shoulders on. Promise that you won't disappear again. That you won't go back to restlessly working day and night. I don't want to see you waste away like that, okay? I want to spend time with you, and we can, I don't know. Shinsou's distress seems to only grow as he continues. We can make a list. Things you want to do. Anything at all. Whatever you want. I promise we can do it. But I need to do this with you, okay? There's nothing I want more. The tear that slips unbiddenly down his cheek is a great contrast to the bright smile that stretches across his features. I actually have one already. He finds himself confessing, the sadness in his voice almost palatable. A long time ago, back when I was still at the orphanage, I had this list. A sad smile replaces the one he wore as he continued. The memory of his younger self, curled up on the small bed at night, writing into his notebook, bruised from both training and unwanted encounters, visible on his skin as he imagined the things he wanted to do in the 8 years he had left. 8 years didn't sound so bad now. What was on it? Silly things, really. Small things. I can show you if you want. It's still somewhere with my old stuff. I'd like that. Yeah. With a nod, he hops onto the metallic structure, making his way towards the warehouse to gather his stuff. He does, however, send Shinsou one text he knows will reassure the teen. To Insomniac. I promise. You're late, problem child. This is the first thing Aizawa grumbles as he sees Izuku walking into the police station. I'm sorry it took more time than I thought to pack everything I wanted to take. More like more time to figure out whether he wanted to bring his suit with him or not. He opted for his suit without the weapons. Is that everything? He pretends to act startled as Tsukauchi makes his way from behind him until he's standing next to Aizawa. He feels his hands subconsciously tighten around the strap of his bag. The black, barely holding by a thread. Duffel bag holding within, the only possessions he had in this world. His expression must have given away something for the two adults, as they don't make any further comment. We'll be going then, Aizawa says to Tsukauchi instead, hands coming up to shake the man's own. Thank you for helping speed up the process. The detective nods at that. I'll see you around. Good luck, Midoriya. Izuku almost goes for his signature snarpy reply, but stops himself just short of saying it. He never meant for his two worlds to collide like this, after all. Thank you, detective. Something changes in the detective's demeanor at his words, but it's gone before he can decipher it. Aizawa is already ushering him out of the station before he can think it over too much. Are we taking a car? He hopes the anxiety that rushes through him at the sheer thought isn't showing on his face. Yes, a cab. Aizawa answers, absent-mindedly, but stops short a moment later, his sudden halt almost knocking Izuku off his feet as he barely manages not to stumble right into the man. What? Here. The man says, not unkindly. Izuku tilts his head to the side, waiting for the hero to explain, as to not give himself away. You can take my arm if you want. It'll be easier that way. The man elaborates finally. What about the... It's not too far. Walking there would only be logical. It seems his anxiety must have shown after all. Not knowing how to react to the man's thoughtfulness, Izuku opts to taking the man's arm instead, hoping the nod he sends his way is enough to convey his gratefulness. The walk is silent, but comfortable, as they make their way to the teacher's apartment near UA. At least that's where Aizawa says they're going. Officially, he'd be the school's ward, but he'd be staying with Aizawa for the formidable future. When they get there, the apartment building stands tall. Izuku figures from its size alone that it's one of the expansive style buildings. The lobby is quiet as they walk in. A lady at the dais greets Aizawa warmly as they both make their way into the elevator. Izuku doesn't quite catch the floor they stop at. Elevators were always disorientating to him, the motion and constant wiring sound making it harder for him to focus his senses. So when the door slides open with a resigning ding, he just moves in with Aizawa, making a mental note to ask him for the floor number later. They walk through a short hallway. Having been holding on to Aizawa's arm until now, Izuku's cane remains folded neatly in his bag, so he settles for running his hands over the wall as they walk, mentally taking note of the turns they take and each steps they make. New spaces were always complicated to discover, especially if he was to spend a lot of time here. I'm going to give you a tour of the apartment, but don't hesitate to ask if you need help finding anything, or if you need assistance in getting used to it all. Sure. He tries not to let his surprise show. They walk into the second room down the hall, just 2 turns from the elevator lift. The place is spacious. It's the first thing he noticed upon entering. Instead of taking note of what is there, his mind immediately goes to what isn't. The empty spaces he sees, through his senses, serve to form a simple mental image. Somehow, he's not surprised at that. Aizawa walks him through the apartment, starting with the kitchen that's not far from the entrance. Though, there, they make their way through different rooms. This is the living room. There's 2 couches near the middle, a big one and a small armchair next to it. In front of both are 2 coffee tables and a TV set just ahead. Aizawa even lets him guide his hand through the different structures at his own pace. Not that Izuku needed it at all, that much. Noise coming from the windows line the living room, and the general white noise of the building itself generates enough to paint a good picture of the objects around him. However, he can't help but take this opportunity when Aizawa tells him about the glass windows that replace any kind of walls on the other side of the living room. A balcony of sorts. However, it's not meant for venturing. It's a nice view you got there. Well, it's... Aizawa seems to remember mid-sentence just what the sentence implied. The man cuts himself off abruptly, and Izuku can practically feel the glare aimed his way. Problem child. The murmur isn't meant to reach his ears, however, nothing much escapes his senses, so he does his best not to burst into laughter as he hears the man grumble underneath his breath about dark humor and stupid teenagers. Sorry, it's just really fun to see how long it takes someone to realize. He doesn't know if this crossed some sort of line. He's known the man for a long time now. However, to the hero, he was barely a stranger. Maybe he should have waited before testing the waters? But, Mr. Aizawa. The man, who had been only half-heartedly paying attention until now, stands straighter at that, giving Izuku his full, rapt attention. I can still go back. You don't have to do this for me. I can take care of myself, and besides, I wouldn't want to be a burden. Going to go with Shinsou and the class at training would help him, but he could still find a way to protect them without going with Aizawa. He needed the man to know that if he wanted, Izuku would give him an out. You need to believe me when I say, kid. If I didn't want you here, you wouldn't be. The man answers, seriously, his heart rate steady, and true to his words. The doubt must have been showing on his expression, though, for the man continues after a moment, as if to drive the point home. Besides, how else am I going to find someone to enjoy this nice view with me? The smirk Izuku can practically picture on the man's face elaborates the moment he seems to catch on to his own words. With a speed that makes him question if the underground hero was actually running away, the man walks towards the hallway, grumbling about problem children all the way. However, just as Izuku thinks the man's going to leave him to explore the rest of the apartment on his own, the hero just short of the doorway. You coming, problem child? Hi. They go through the rest of the house in a similar fashion. His room turns out to be the one across from Aizawa's bedroom. A bathroom is the only thing separating them. The room he's given is the biggest he's ever had, not to mention an actual bed he gets to have. Izuku can happily say now that there will be no more warehouse couches in his future. It almost takes his breath away. The thought of having this room to call his own, if only for a little while. By the end of the tour, and their little exploration expedition, Aizawa tells him to make himself comfortable, informing him that if he wanted the water to be hot, this would be the perfect time to take a bath. However, Izuku can't help feel it's a jab to his hygiene. He made do with what he had at his disposal while he lived at the warehouse, whether it was from public bathrooms or gas station showers. He knows he's not that dirty. His senses wouldn't let him survive through a day if he was. However, he can't help the excitement he feels bubbling up at the prospect of a proper bath and shower. So, with that new, exciting prospect in his mind, he makes his way to the bathroom, his spare set of clothes in hand. The smell of soap crosses his senses, hitting him at full force as soon as he walks into the room. Aizawa had already shown him where the shower and the bath were. However, he can't help but marvel at the sheer space the room held. Nothing like the cramped showers he used to speed through. The smell was lighter and easier to bear here. No sign of filth or rust. Seeping down, he makes sure to fold his clothes neatly on the counter next to the sink. The empty space above it makes it painfully clear that there's a mirror there. Barely managing to stifle a sigh, he tries not to linger too much on that thought. His hand absentmindedly coming to rake his hair, getting tangled in his untamable curls in the process. He tries to picture what he must look like. Long, green, curly hair, falling like curtains around his face. Well-honed muscles, tainted with the countless scars marging his skin. He concludes he wouldn't make a pretty picture. Breathing deeply through his mouth, he steps under the shower head, hands coming up to reach for the handles. He retracts his fingers just as soon as he makes contact with the metal, though, mind immediately conjuring any feasible reason for what he thinks he just felt on the designated surface. Because there's no way, right? Tentative fingers reach back towards the metal surface, almost as if afraid to find out whether he was right or not. To his shock and slight awe, he finds that this was indeed what he thought it was. Braille, printed onto waterproof stickers, labeling the different degrees of temperature and pressure. An unidentifiable emotion surges through him at that moment, a rush of something akin to gratitude and pure awe. No one has ever gone through this much trouble for him. It's overwhelming, really. For the second time that day, he feels tears spill unwittingly down his cheeks. No one has ever cared enough to do this for him before. Even back at the orphanage, he'd always had to rely on his senses, which was at times more exhausting than he could possibly explain. He showers slowly, selfishly wanting to take advantage of the warm water and the sheer amount of cleanliness that seeps into his body with every minute he spends scrubbing and washing. The bath he immerses himself in afterwards is nothing short of a blessing to his worn muscles and joints, so much that he finds himself fully submerging himself until the outside sounds are nothing but background noise to his ears. Water has always served well to either amplify his senses during the rain or suppress them. It's peaceful, really. The calmness of the water lures him into a sense of security when he finds himself reluctant to leave. The inevitable need to come up for air, however, wins over his will to stay hidden in the newly found heaven. He makes quick work of drying himself afterwards, putting on his other set of street clothes, one of his only 3 he owns, a black hoodie, torn at the sleeves, and some worn-out gray sweatpants. Aizawa, having just stepped out of his room, stops short just as Izuku exits the bathroom. "You need a haircut, kid," the man says, voice sounding almost bored. Izuku finds himself self-consciously reaching for his hair. His curls, still wet and dripping, are even longer than usual. He can't help the snarky reply that comes out of his mouth before he could think better of it. You're really one to talk. Your hair is even longer than mine. At the awkward pause, he tries to salvage what little credibility he has. At least that's what Shinsou tells me. I don't see your point. It takes him a moment to figure out that the man is actually playing along. The same feeling of gratefulness and gratitude swell in his heart at that. Which reminds him, I also wanted to thank you for, the braille labels you put on the bathroom. No one has. Bracing himself for the small confession he was about to make, he plows on. Aizawa needed to understand just how thankful he was. No one has ever done anything like that for me before. So, rubbing his arm nervously, he tries to level his gaze with the man, hoping he's not missing the target by much. Thank you so much, Mr. Aizawa. The silence stretches, and Izuku thinks that maybe he made a mistake and revealed too much. However, it's a moment later that Aizawa responds, voice even, and heartbeat ringing true. Basic human decency isn't something to praise. Your last caretakers really were idiots, weren't they? The smile that forms on his face as he hears the man's words is all too sincere. And you could drop the honorifics, kid. I'm your guardian now, after all. Maybe this arrangement wouldn't be so bad, after all. He wonders what he did to deserve all this. Alright, okay, so first off, I love how the chapter started off with Izuku and Hitoshi cuddling. We love that. We love a little bit of fluff here, and I wish to see a whole lot more of them being, fluffy, and clearly with the whole list, I feel like it's just going to be a bunch of dates, and I feel from this chapter onwards, it's just going to be fluff, 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 until we get to the big angsty part, and it just hits you, right? We're going to get loved bombed, okay? This is my prediction right now. Kira 18 is going to come, it's going to be like, oh, look, super cute, super amazing. Isn't this so sweet? Occasional angst here and there. It can't be all fluff. We gotta get thrown out of our, out of our fluffy area once in a while, but pretty much everything's gonna be fluffy. It's not gonna be like, I'm about to tear up and cry and sob, right? I'm still probably gonna cry at the fluffy bits. Not because like, oh my god, they're so cute, I'm gonna cry. No, I'm crying because I know how much this fluff is gonna make it so much more harder and so much more painful when it actually happens. I'm gonna start crying. You're 18. The death hasn't even happened. I'm already crying. Fuck you. Fuck you for being good at writing. Okay, moving on. But I think it's gonna be very fluffy. That's my prediction. On to the next one. So Izuku mentioned twice that, empty space, right? Empty space when it comes to describing mirrors and windows. So that makes me wonder, does the way glass, because both windows and mirrors are glass, does the way that glass reflects sound have to do with the way he can't, he can't really see that? Because mirrors reflect sounds, obviously, but they reflect sounds in a different way, right? Same with windows. At least that's what I remember from like a science class way back then. Please correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. Please. Thank you. If I'm saying something stupid and being stupid, please inform me down in the comments. I'd love to see that. Maybe just don't call me stupid. Just say, hey, you got this wrong. It's actually this, and this, and this. Please don't call me stupid. I can't believe I have to say that. But I'm just going to say that. Covering my bases. Please don't call me stupid. But yeah, I wonder if that has to do with anything. Also, I really love Izuku's relationship with rain and water. Like, rain amplifies his vision for the simple fact that when it's raining, it's literal constant noise, without a doubt. And actually, water is really conductive with sound. Literally, it's super conductive with sound. That when we go underwater, our ears aren't built to be able to hear the sound that is conducted via, water. But water is a great conductor for sound. It is amazing. It's how whales can hear each other from miles and miles away. The water. Not their sheer freaking volume. No, the water. Water conducts sound really nicely, and it's interesting. It's interesting. Again, if I'm saying something stupid, correct me in the comments. This is something I don't even know where I learned this. I'll be honest with you. So take me with a grain of salt sometimes. But yeah, so I wonder if that has to do with it. Because, you know, obviously that one time where he was able to clearly see Shinsou's face, which, by the way, can we have that moment again before, you know, before Izuku dies? Please and thank you. Kira18, I'm saying this as if you could write it in afterwards. You can't. I mean, you could update it. You could, you know, just change that for me. You know, it's a little side cut. I'm joking. You don't have to do that. It's a joke. That's a /J. But, yeah. Okay, on to my last note, which is the Braille. I think it is so sweet, the fact that Aizawa put in Braille for Izuku, and honestly, when I read that, I had to take a small little break, because I'm like, I was starting to tear up at the simple fact that how much that little gesture shows that Aizawa cares so much. I've seen a lot of fanfiction where Aizawa's love language is different types, but the two main ones that I always see is acts of service and physical touch, right? It's always one of those two that are his main, or a mixture of the both, right? And in this one, it seems to be act of service, clearly with the Braille thing, like, right? He actively did this for Izuku, and I love that. And then when Aizawa said, you know, it's bare human decency, right? Here's word. Basic human decency isn't something to praise. He's right. Snaps. Basic human decency is not something that you should be praising. It's something that you should just expect. Unfortunately, in this society, we live in a society. In this society, we... I was about to say we live in a society where that is, you know, not a norm, right? Basic human decency is not something that we get often. It's something that we praise because it's not, you know, it's not given. And it should be given. And it sucks that we live in a society that, you know, that is something that we are now having to praise because we don't even get that. We expect basic human decency and we're praising basic human decency, but here's the thing. We don't even get human basic decency. Basic human... We live in a society. Basic human I'm sorry. For some reason, I really am obsessed with saying we live in a society right now. Thank you so much for my little mind to going, oh, we live in a society. And now I just want to repeat it. It's repeating in my head. That's why I'm saying it right now. But what was it called? Human basic decency? Basic human decency. There you go. My bad. But as I said, it sucks that we live in a society where basic human decency isn't something that is... I'm going to end these notes soon because that is all that's running in my head. But that is something that we're given. But I love Aizawa for saying that. Preach. Preach, King. Preach. Preach. I love you, Aizawa. Anyways, as always, my raindrops. It is raindrops, right? Yes. Okay, I kind of forgot your name for a second. My bad. Sorry. Sorry, guys. Please. Put the weapons down. Put the weapons down. You put the lighter down. Thank you. As always, my raindrops, make sure to eat, sleep, drink water, take your meds. Have a wonderful day or night. Link to my Discord server and socials are down in the description. Subscribe to see more of my content, and thank you so much for watching.